Hello, and welcome to my lecture on Chapter 7, which is on self and moral development in middle childhood through early adolescence. Learning objectives for this chapter is PowerPoint. Explain the differentiated structure of self-concept in middle childhood and early adolescence. Identifying influences on self-concept development and factors affecting individual differences in viewing and valuing self. And discuss classic and contemporary views of moral development, as well as factors that promote pro-social and antisocial behavior, and suggest interventions to encourage healthy development in middle childhood and early adolescence. So the self-concept, it is multidimensional, like a house with various rooms. So there's different parts with different characteristics, if you will. So early elementary school age children still have a positive view of themselves, and they begin to evaluate themselves on the basis of others' standards. By age 8 to 10, they are capable of integrating opposing characteristics. By early adolescence, their more abstract trait-like concept of self begins to develop, and self-esteem typically declines as social comparison begins. So that means they start thinking they're not as pretty, they're not as athletic, they're not as muscular, they're not as tall, they're not as thin, they're not as fit, they're not as whatever as someone else. And the academic self-concept is divided into subject areas. So math concept, English concept. How do I think of myself as a history person? How do I think of myself as an artist or a musician or a singer or whatever? And the non-academic self-concept is divided into social, emotional, and physical self, with the physical divided into ability and appearance. So what are you capable of and what do you look like? So in true form, I've provided some visuals in this presentation for you guys. So there's different types of self-concept listed here. So there's the ideal self, which is the ideal personal self that one would like to be. So how people would like to become. I want to become a doctor, right? Like that's what I'm working on in my PhD right now. I would like to become a volleyball player. If I'm in 5th grade, I've never played sports before, but I want to learn. The ideal social self is how we would like others to see us. So do I want to be perceived as cool, fitting in, accepted, funny, charming, class clown, studious? How do I want to be perceived by others? Expected self is how people expect to see themselves at some future time. So where are you going to be in 5 to 10 years? Those kinds of things. The social self is how people feel that others see them. So differentiating that from the ideal social self, which is how they would like others to see them, the social self is how they think people actually do see them. The actual self, the actual personal self, is how people perceive themselves. So you like yourself, do you dislike yourself? Do you like some parts, dislike some parts? Here's another image for you. So the self-concept cycle. So as you see yourself, that leads to actions, and that lends how others see you. And that therefore leads to others' reactions to you, which are going to affect how you see yourself. So you can see how your self-perception can influence how others react to you, right? So if I, let's say, for example, looking at this from like a cognitive behavioral theory lens, let's say I have a core belief that I'm unlovable. And so let's say some actions that I take are attention seeking. I try to get people to show me that they care about me through perhaps feigning that I'm sicker than I actually am, and seeing if anybody will bring me soup or come try to take care of me. Or because I feel unlovable, if I have a boyfriend, I might constantly check his phone and be jealous of friends that he has that are females because I'm really insecure and thinking he doesn't really love me. And so in any of those different examples, people might see me as clingy, attention seeking in a negative way, insecure, crazy, right? If, my jealousy reaches the point that I'm following my boyfriend wherever he goes and stalking him, right? Which is going to affect their reactions to me. They might avoid me. They might yell at me. They might call me crazy, call me names. So all because I have a core belief that I'm unlovable, it leads to people treating me poorly because of the actions that I choose to do, right? So working with somebody in a therapy setting, this is extremely useful to know, because your thoughts about yourself don't just affect you, they affect other people, right? Or they have the potential to, if you will, as exemplified by the example I just gave. So influences on the development of self-concept. So competence and support contribute to self-esteem. So do you know your stuff, or do you know things with confidence, right? So competence is fully knowing something. Are you good at science? Are you good at cheerleading? Are you good at basketball? Are you good at playing the bass, guitarish version, or the stringed version in orchestra, right? Or do you have support? Do you have friends? Do you have family? Do you have peers and a support group of some kind, or the student government that surrounds you, or people in a club of interest, or maybe you go to the American Red Cross, you've got other volunteers. Do they support you and uplift you? Those things contribute to self-esteem, which is your value of yourself. How much do you value you, right? So the more you feel like you know something, the more supported you are, the higher your self-esteem could be. So global self-esteem is based on competence in areas of importance to an individual, which could be different from person to person, right? So for me, it's really important to be competent in the area of counseling versus maybe not so much in astrophysics. But somebody that's an astrophysicist, maybe that absolutely is important to them, but they don't care so much about counseling, right? Self-evaluations are based on concrete standards of success. So good grades, making the team, getting the approval of others, getting asked to the dance, getting the job through the interview, right? And social comparison as a base uses a basis for evaluating one's own abilities. So I want to be like that, right? You have to remember that thinking about psychosocial stages of development, Erik Erikson, the adolescent is in the phase of ego identity versus despair, right? And so their personality is very fragile. It's very loose. It's very not concrete. And so the comparison is a means by which a teenager can develop an identity of who they actually want to be. Do I want to be more like that? Or do I want to be more like that? I don't know. Do I want to be more like that? Right? Because it's the age at which the teen is starting to differentiate self from the caregiver, from the parents, from the home life, and figure out who they are as an individual. And that may involve a lot of social comparison, or typically does involve a lot of social comparison to figure that out. In development of self-concept, there is protecting of self-esteem, especially if it's low. So they might prefer a setting rich in positive adult reinforcement. So they like spending more time around adults. I can say that I was one of those people. I really enjoyed time around adults when I was a teenager more than being around peers, because I felt more accepted. And then a downward social comparison can occur when comparing self to less competent individuals. Self-esteem also affects quality of life for children and adults. And how is that true? So I've seen many persons come through my office for counseling, or even at a psychiatric hospital or probation, where their self-esteem majorly impacts the way that they're willing to try to live their lives. So for example, people that struggle with alcoholism on DWI probation, they didn't have confidence that they could stop drinking. You know what happened to their quality of life? It worsened with every jail sentence and additional community service hour that they had to serve or complete. Right? They didn't believe that they could do it, and it affected their sobriety. Now, what about that adult that doesn't think they're going to get the job no matter what they do? They might never go to an interview. They might never be willing to go try to get that job. And it might be based on a cognitive distortion, like overgeneralization, where they take one event and they smear it across a variety of other ones, and they say, oh, it's all going to be that way. I'm never going to get a job because I didn't get this one. No one's ever going to like me because this person didn't like me. You see, self-esteem could affect dating life, romantic relationships. Self-esteem for children could affect friend-making abilities, or willing to, or not abilities, but friend-making efforts. Right? If I don't think I'm worth having friends, if I think I'm weird and strange and no one likes me, why would I try to go ask somebody to play with me at the playground? Why would I ask somebody to come to my birthday party? That's a sleepover. I might not, right? So self-esteem is something that's really important to pay attention to in the counseling environment. So here is an image of global self-concept and different things that are part of that. So there's your academic self, your social self, affect self, competence part of yourself, your physical self, and the family side of yourself. These are all things that contribute to your concept of you and your world around you. Now, as a reminder, if you guys ever want these images, I put the link in the bottom corners, usually somewhere on the bottom in these little underlined things. You can use those links by typing them in your browser, or you can just Google what the image is in Google and then go to images. You should be able to find most of these things pretty easily. Okay, so self-concept versus self-esteem. And you see the link over here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can read it better. So what's the difference between self-concept and self-esteem? Because they are very close. So self-concept is the idea of the self constructed from the beliefs one holds about oneself and the responses of others. Idea of self-constructed of the self, which is constructed from beliefs one holds about themselves and responses of others, versus self-esteem is one's overall subjective emotional evaluation of his or her own self-worth. Quick pause. What's the difference between objective and subjective? So objective means free of thought, feeling, opinion, perception, bias, if you will, versus subjective is where you have thoughts, feelings, opinions, perspectives, perceptions based on whatever something is. So if I have a subjective evaluation of my own self-worth, that means it's rooted in what do I think of me? And that's how I get to my worth. Instead of looking at facts that are free of my feelings, that would be an objective evaluation of myself. So subjective is rooted in thoughts, feelings, perceptions, opinions. For self-concept, you have more of a cognitive aspect of yourself, which cognitive means thinking. There's a lot more thought. And then self-esteem, it's more of an evaluation of yourself. And self-concept principles are related. Self-esteem is evaluated on principles about that one has about themselves. Within self-concept, there's no comparison of you to others or anything else. Self-esteem does involve comparison. It's a major part which influences evaluating your own self in comparison to others. Self-concept highlights information about one's own self, and thus it does not consider valuing who they are, who one is. And self-esteem is basically about finding worth or value in one's own self. So you see there's a big difference between self-concept and self-esteem. Biggest difference is that self-esteem involves valuing of self versus this is the construction of how do you perceive you? How do you think about you? Like objectively so, right? Free of feelings. Okay. Zoom out on that one. Remember, there's your link right there. And then this next one looks at the difference between self-esteem and self-confidence, a little shorter. So self-esteem versus confidence. So self-esteem is that overall evaluation that is positive or negative that you have of yourself, versus self-confidence is belief in your abilities to succeed, which also could be termed self-efficacy. How much do you believe that you can effectively do things in your life? All right, so y'all ever see self-efficacy? That's what that means. Fun research word, if anybody doesn't know it, efficacious or efficaciously means effectively. It's a synonym for that. But self-esteem is about self-evaluation versus self-confidence is having faith in oneself, is something that plays a major role in having self-confidence. Do you have faith in yourself that you can do it? Self-esteem doesn't evaluate you based on certain tasks in life versus self-confidence is all about task-based evaluation. And lastly, self-esteem is directly related to ideologies about yourself, and self-confidence is about having confidence to accomplish certain tasks and face certain situations in life. Okay, So we got self-concept, self-esteem, and self-esteem versus self-confidence. Different kinds of self-valuing: self-esteem, self-efficacy, and narcissism. So self-esteem is feeling like a worthwhile person. A child with high self-esteem builds good relationships. In self-efficacy, this is the belief in our ability to meet challenges with success, which we kind of touched on in that last slide. Narcissism is feeling superior, entitled, and craving admiration. You dominate others. They often dominate others to get what they want. Research comparing pathways to narcissism versus self-esteem. So that's talking about neuro pathways in the brain. High self-esteem is linked to warm and supportive parenting. So that's to say, if a child has high self-esteem, it is likely, or it is linked or correlated with parents that are warm and supportive. And then narcissism is shown to be linked to parents that overvalue their child. So make them the center of the world and everything they want and need, and perhaps giving into all of their demands and wishes, right? So they overvalue the child, placing them up on a pedestal, if you will. So the 3 personality disorder clusters. Now, children cannot be diagnosed with a personality disorder. I want to put that out there immediately. They can be diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder, and anxiety disorders, depressive disorders, bipolar disorders, but they cannot be diagnosed with personality disorders until they are 18. I've had coworkers and psychiatrists that have been coworkers refer to adolescents with presenting personality disorder characteristics as teens with budding personality disorders. Now, as I previously mentioned, teenagers' personalities are fragile in that they are ever changing. They can change from week to week, from fad to fad, month to month, year to year. And so you can't diagnose that disorder till the personality is finished growing, right? 18. It's not finished growing really ever. We continue to grow and change across the lifespan, but there are things that stick. So the 3 personality disorder clusters, there's A, B, and C. And cluster A involves odd and eccentric personality types, which involves paranoid personality disorder, schizoid personality disorder, and schizotypal personality disorder. Cluster B is the dramatic, unpredictable cluster. This is probably the most known set by people. It's antisocial personality disorder, which is your psychopath, sociopath. And I don't remember if I've told you guys about the difference between those two. Does anybody know the difference between a psychopath, sociopath? Think about it for 5 or 10 seconds. Do you know the difference between psychopath and sociopath? If you don't know the difference is rooted in the first half of each word: psychopath, sociopath. So both persons, a sociopath and a psychopath, would not have the ability to experience empathy for others. They both might present with abusive animals during childhood, setting things on fire, those classic kinds of behaviors. However, the difference is psychopath is born without the psychological ability to be empathetic, versus a sociopath is socialized to not have empathy in the environment in which they grew up. So this could be a gang lifestyle. This could be in the home of addicted parents with drug and alcohol issues, or mentally ill parents. They never maybe were taught how to be empathetic. So they were socialized in a way where they didn't learn that skill. Borderline personality disorder, that one's very commonly known, often histrionic personality disorder, and narcissistic personality disorder. Interestingly, very low self-esteem is what is behind narcissism, which is kind of ironic. But these personality types, the last 3 that I mentioned, borderline, histrionic, narcissistic, are often resultant of severe chronic childhood abuse, neglect, and poor attachment styles to caregivers in childhood. And so, the borderline as a way, each of these, so antisocial as a way to get needs met, they learn not to care about others, perhaps. So they never learn that empathy in order to care about others, just care about themselves. Borderline personality disorder, they do attention seeking behaviors, perhaps like cutting, trying to kill oneself, just pretending that, feigning illnesses, catastrophizing different events to get people to come and rescue and demonstrate that they care. So they use attention seeking behaviors, making themselves the center of attention in order to make people demonstrate that they care. Histrionic personality disorder, they use a lot of hypersexual behaviors in order to get people to demonstrate that they care about them or that they're interested in them. So they might wear the very low cut shirts. You can see this in the LGBTQ plus community. Perhaps some folks that like to do cross-dressing or drag can present with histrionic personality disorder traits, where they're very hypersexual and want a lot of attention in that way. And then narcissistic personality disorder, this is the person that is very egocentric, makes everything about themselves. They turn the story around to be about them, turn it into being about them. And they do it as a way to build themselves up because they don't feel cared for by others. So they puff up their own ego themselves as a protective mechanism, but it is very much so rooted in very low self-esteem. And then cluster C, the third one's probably the most known of those, is the anxious fearful cluster. So this involves avoidant personality disorder, dependent personality disorder, and obsessive compulsive personality disorder. Now, I wonder, I didn't know this until I was a research assistant at U of H, actually, under Dr. Zwolenski back in 2014-ish, I think, or 15, whenever that was. Does anybody know the difference between OCD and OCPD? I had it clarified to me in this way, and I've remembered it ever since. I thought it was really helpful. So OCD is when you have obsessions and compulsions that you don't like. You wish you didn't have to do them, but you have to turn the lights off 15 times before you go to bed, or you have to count 15 steps up the stairs before you can stop going up the stairs. You have to count 8 sheets of toilet paper. You have to pray 4 times before you start your car. You have to do whatever your obsession or compulsion is, and it's disruptive to your life and you can't stand it. You wish you didn't do it. But obsessive compulsive personality disorder, there is a liking for the obsessions and compulsions that you have. So it's a personality type where you have to do things to a perfect amount, but they have to be so perfect that you perhaps never finish because they have to be so detailed and so perfect. You just won't give up on it. You just keep working on the project beyond when you should, even though it's really good and almost perfect. You have to keep working on it until it's absolutely perfect. So this might be the color-coded closet, guilty. This might be the person that has to adjust everything to be just so, right? This might be the person that has to control the assignment and they're not going to let anybody else do it. My way or the highway. No, I'm not rigid. I'm very rigid about this. No one else gets to do it. I'm going to do it my way. I might be particular about other different cleanliness habits or what have you, but those are the different personality clusters, and showing you another graphic to show how they can overlap. So cluster A personality disorders. So for schizotypal, there's a distorted reality involved where there's odd ideas, eccentricity, unusual experiences, superstition, religiosity, suspiciousness, and reclusiveness, which means isolation of self, recluse. And for paranoid, there's delusional paranoid experiences. There's paranoia, distrustful nature. They doubt loyalty, keep grudges, and they're easily offended. And for the schizoid personality, that involves a lot of social withdrawal. So they're aloof, they're uninterested in others, solitary, and socially withdrawn. They're unaffected by praise and criticism. And you see that the overlap of all three is the negative symptoms of schizophrenia. Okay. For cluster B, you see that there is a scale of impulsivity running across the middle, and then affective instability across up and down. And so that's to say that the higher you are up here, the harder it is to control your affects. easier it is to control affect. The more impulsive you are, the less impulsive perhaps you are, right? So highly sexualized, attention seeking, psychopathic or psychopathy, sociopathy, and then narcissistic is over here. Least impulsive, least affectively unstable. So they control their face, they control impulses, right? Okay. And then cluster C, personality disorder. So the avoidant personality is inhibited, involves inferiority, social withdrawal, shyness, avoidance, embarrassment, and low self-esteem. The dependent personality, this might look like codependency. It could be masked by that or misdiagnosed as that. This is insecure personality type. There's indecision, clinginess, passivity. They require reassurance, and there's fear of being alone. And then for the obsessive compulsive personality, they're rigid and requiring of order. They need rules, organization, perfectionistic. They're excessively moral, constantly productive, and rigid in the ways that they do things. And the overlap of these three would be the presentation of anxious symptomatology. So this is something really cool that I found while I was making this presentation for you guys. It's called the personality disorder star. And I'm so obsessed and I'm going to use it for the rest of my career, either as a teaching tool or with clients, or as a professor or with clients. So Karen Horney was an influential psychodynamic theorist who argued that there were three primary ways of relating to others: moving toward, moving against, and moving away. Moving toward was characterized by strong feelings of affiliation, need, and self-effacement. Moving against was characterized by strong tendencies to compete, aggress, and self-enhance. And moving away was characterized by tendencies to separate, distance oneself, and individuate from others. Horney's characterization of these three types precisely parallels the three dimensions of the I am. Power is moving against, love is moving forward, and freedom is moving away. With this insight, we are now in a position to construct the personality disorder star depicted here. So this is so interesting. So you see the 6 different personality types on here: antisocial, narcissistic, histrionic, dependent, avoidant, and schizoid. And you see how different points of the star represent different things. So avoidant is more submissive versus narcissistic is more dominant. Histrionic is attention seeking, where schizoid is very detached, not interested at all. So that moving away, they don't move toward, they don't move against, they just move away. But histrionic does move towards you, does move against you, but they don't move away because they want that attention, right? Now, for dependent personality, they're needy in terms of moving towards this. They don't move against you. They don't move away from you. They move towards you. They're dependent upon you. And the antisocial personality is hostile and self-centered, right? Remember, this is psychopathy, sociopathy, psychopath, sociopath, no empathy. They move against you. They move away from you, but they will not move towards you. Move against you, move away from you. So that means they will, where is that at? Moving against. Moving against characterizes strong tendencies to compete, aggress, and self-enhance. So moving against, the antisocial person is going to aggress and focus on self, enhancing self, right? And then you see narcissistic is moving against. It's dominant, moving, they don't move away, they don't move towards, they move against. And then avoidant is the opposite there. And I recognize that not every single personality disorder is on here. Like borderline isn't on here, and neither is OCPD or schizotypal or which one's missing? Paranoid personality and yeah, that's the ones that are missing. But regardless of that, I think this is a really wonderful start to kind of differentiate between what is each one, how is it different, right? So yeah, that's a cool little image you guys can use if you want. And then just something interesting to know is that there are subtypes of narcissism. So there's the covert narcissist that is shy, envious, and self-effacing. There might be a cerebral narcissist that you come into contact where they think they're smarter and they're extremely self-important. The somatic narcissist criticizes others and obsesses over the physical appearance. And the spiritual narcissist would be someone that uses intimidation and has a holier than thou perspective. All right. Gender, race, ethnicity, and self-esteem differences. So gender is a small, stable self-esteem difference favoring males in late childhood and early adolescence. They have equal levels of voice at this point. Where for race and ethnicity, there's slight self-esteem advantage for Black Americans based on current research. They will attribute negative feedback to prejudice and compare themselves to members of their own marginalized group. They value self-concept domains in which their group excels, and they're less likely to show gender difference in self-esteem. Black Americans are the minority group most extensively studied, and research results are not generalizable to other marginalized groups. Cross-cultural differences in the development of the self. So different influences on self-concept are based on beliefs, values, expectations of the culture. Values and emphases in individualistic cultures, more so Western cultures, include autonomy, self-reliance, independence, individual pride, achievement, competitive advantage, and self-expression. Values and emphases in collectivistic cultures that are more Eastern involve relatedness, interdependence, group needs, social harmony, hard work, and this is pride that is not rooted in the self, because in that culture, it's going to be seen as arrogant to have pride in yourself. So it's about the group. What does the group need? Not what do I need? Very much an American thing. I before we, right? Type of perspective that's very here, but not in Eastern culture. The self that develops in one culture will be different from the self that would develop in a different culture. So that's very much so something to consider when working with clients, right? Looking at the ACA Code of Ethics, it's really important for us to be multiculturally competent, because just because we have a view of how one should be living within a family or interact with family members or relate to family members, that doesn't mean that's the way that another person was raised or wants to relate to their own family. So you really want to pay attention to culture whenever looking at individual development with individual clients. The moral self. So there are cultural and historical variations in what is construed as moral. Generally, it is concern for others, sharing, forgiving, and benevolence. It involves sense of justice, fairness, and rights and needs of all concerned. Trustworthiness and being honest in your dealings with others. Self-regulation and inhibiting impulses. So self-regulation meaning controlling yourself. Do you have self-control? Are you able to control your impulses or stop them or hinder them, or be able to put a hand between you and the thing you're trying to impulsively do? Can you inhibit them? And it involves hard work and achievement. Elements of morality, emotions, cognitions, and behaviors. They may not always be coordinated, such as when behavior is not consistent with beliefs or feelings, right? So they may not always be intertwining if they're not consistent. One of the things I've said to many of my clients, and I will continue to say, is that one of the quickest ways living your life out of alignment with your morals and values is one of the quickest ways to get yourself an anxiety or depression problem. So if you're somebody that really values honesty and you're going around and lying to people everywhere, it's a very quick way to get depression or anxiety issue. If it's really important for you to be a healthy person, but you are overweight and you drink all the time and you're using drugs, anxiety, depression problem. If it's really important for you to be close to family, but you're currently estranged because you're too prideful to apologize first and you don't want to say anything, you might have anxiety or depression because you're not getting to act on your moral, your value of being close to family, right? Or if it's really important for you to be a good mom or dad and you never see your kids, anxiety, depression problem, right? So it's important to know one's morals and values in order to best guide one's behavior so that they don't end up with unnecessary preventable anxiety and depression issues. Also, children's knowledge of moral standards may not coordinate with how likely they are to cheat or help others cheat, because it depends a lot on their brain functioning and development, where they're at. Some classic theories of moral development: Freud's psychoanalytic theory of moral development. Conscience emerges at ages 3 to 5 based on fear of parents. This view is not supported by evidence. The conscience develops earlier and is not based on fear of parents. Excuse me just a second. So Piaget stages, excuse me, based on growth in logical thinking. I almost just said drinking. You can see table 7.3 in your books. So I also had a graphic in a previous presentation of these, but the pre-moral stage where you make your own rules, heteronormous phase, where rules must be followed, the autonomous stage where rules can change and you're interested in serving justice. And then I also included an image on Kohlberg's levels of moral reasoning, which had the two stages each. So pre-conventional involves avoiding punishment. Conventional is others' approval and social order are valued. And then the post-conventional level involves principles of justice. So for Piaget's moral development, moral reasoning develops through childhood due to disequilibrium and decreasing egocentrism. So stage 1 is the pre-moral stage from ages 0 to 5 years. So little understanding of rules as children lends to not being able to carry out complex mental operations. Behavior is regulated from outside of the child. So this is your sensorimotor and pre-operational stages, right? As we saw on previous slide. And then the stage 2 is the heteronormous moral realism. 5 to 9 years old, rules are rigid and given by adults. God, rules tell you what is right or wrong. Consequences dictate the severity of a behavior, not the intentions. And this is your pre-operational and concrete stages, right, of Piaget's theory. And then stage 3 is the autonomous morality, moral relativism. This is 10 years old and older. This is that word. I did not write that. It's a graphic I grabbed, but emphasizes, or maybe this is from Britain or something, but emphasizes cooperation. Rules are changeable under certain circumstances and with mutual consent. This is your concrete and formal operational stage of Piaget's stage of cognitive development, which I thought it was on a previous slide, but I guess it wasn't, or it's in a previous presentation. Yeah. So those are the cognitive stages, cognitive developmental stages. And then these are your moral stages over here, just to clarify that. Okay, so limitations of classic cognitive theories. There's limited usefulness of these theories for moral development. For young children, there's greater moral reasoning than Piaget indicated. Young children don't treat all rules or standards as equal. It's important to distinguish different kinds of rules. So there's moral rules involving justice, welfare, and rights, sharing, not stealing, hurting, and then conventional rules that have to do with social agreements and family standards, right? Etiquette, don't chew with your mouth open, put your elbows on the table, and then personal rules about appearance, spending, and friend choices. Adolescents comply least with personal rules, and children focus on fairness and distributive justice. Children's pro-social behaviors. So pro-social behaviors or altruism involve acting to benefit others. These increase with age and begin in toddlerhood. I think this presentation is the first time I've seen the word toddlerhood, but it's there. Emotions are a source of helping behavior. So empathy is feeling with another. So putting on their shoes and imagining what life would be like if you were that person. Not simply just feeling for another person, which is sympathy, like, oh, I feel bad for you, you are broke. No, what would it feel like to be broke yourself? Right? That is empathy, getting in their shoes, in their clothes, looking at life through their eyeballs. What would it be like to be that person in their circumstances with their issues? And prosocial behavior is influenced by increased cognitive abilities, abstract thinking, they're hedonistic and concerned for their own needs as preschoolers, and later they see purpose in helping, and even later start showing empathy or sympathy, excuse me. Moral reasoning is linked to popular children and having good social skills. Different children follow different paths to prosocial conduct. Okay, temperament, personality, parents, and prosocial behavior. So temperament and personality may foster altruism. It's influenced by sociability or shyness, social competence, self-esteem, assertiveness, and self-regulation. Elements of parenting that promote prosocial behavior include parents having strong prosocial values and helping behaviors, modeling and expressing happiness in prosocial behaviors, and providing opportunities for children to engage in prosocial actions like donating or helping in various contexts, volunteering, things of that nature. Children's antisocial behavior. So intent to harm or injure another and disregard for harm that is caused. So lying is a common type of antisocial behavior. So when we say antisocial behavior, that doesn't necessarily mean antisocial personality disorder where they've got no empathy and psychopath, sociopath type situation. Antisocial behavior just means undesirable social behavior, right? Antisocial. So cover up rule breaking, increasing tendency of this in middle childhood. Cognitive and social factors contribute to this tendency. What's interesting is we do not have to teach children to lie. They just know how to do it. Fun fact, right? No one has to teach them how to do it. They just learn it over time. Aggression has links to anger, frustration, and facilitates self-protection. So it declines in elementary school for most children. The nature of aggression changes. More relational aggression is aimed at damaging peer relationships. Aggressive children can exhibit hostile attributional bias, HAB, involving underdeveloped self-control and weak problem solving as contributors. One of the things that I like to say to clients that are working on managing anger or any other emotion is that emotions inherently are not good or bad. They just are. They serve a purpose to let us know what we like, what we don't like, what we agree with, what we disagree with, when injustice is happening to us or to others, when something meaningful to us has occurred, whether that's loss or a gain, right? Emotions just are. So anger is included in that. Anger is not good or bad. It just is. It's a sign that injustice has taken place in some way. Either we've been disrespected or someone's being wronged morally or something's going wrong. So it's not what the emotion is, it's what we do with our emotions that makes a difference. You know, anxiety in and of itself is not bad. It lets us know what's important, right? Like you're watching this PowerPoint right now because you're worried about doing well in your class. So it motivated you to get on YouTube and listen to this video, right? So that is anxiety serving a positive purpose. It's motivating you to study for your class, for your human growth and development class, right? It motivates you to study for math or for whatever other classes you've ever taken before. It motivates you to set an alarm to get up for work the next day so you're not late because you care about having a job, right? Or the anxiety associated with bills. It's importing your electricity or your phone or your electric or your Wi-Fi or your whatever, your Netflix stays open. So that anxiety prompts you to pay your bill or set a reminder to pay your bill or whatever, right? So emotions aren't good or bad inherently. They just are. I just wanted to share that little counseling tidbit with you. And you're going to see likely a lot of people that come in and say, I don't want to feel this anymore. I don't want to feel that anymore. I just don't want to be angry. I just don't want to be depressed. I just don't want to be, anxious. And in some cases, you're going to run into people that have potentially treatment resistant anxiety or depression where no amount of talking is going to help their symptoms and they need a medication, or maybe they perhaps need ECT or TMS, right? So ECT is electroconvulsive therapy, which is something that involves putting you to sleep. And this is something that's for adults that are a little older in age that have tried medications and therapy didn't work. And so they do ECT where they are put under anesthesia and their brain is seized for about 15 seconds in a controlled seize. So they'll put ultrasound gel either here and here or here and here, or here and here, depending on what side of the brain that the psychiatrist or doctor is trying to stimulate. I've watched it, so I've seen it happen. Or I know the process. And so they'll hold it and the person's just completely asleep and the brain is seizing inside the skull, and they hold it for about 15 seconds and the person goes in recovery and wakes up out of it. While it can help fix major severe depression, there are side effects affecting the memory. So short-term memory is affected where people kind of can't remember stuff. But if your depression is so severe that that's minor compared to the severity of the depression, then some people are willing to risk that. And then TMS is less invasive. It's transcranial magnetic stimulation, and it is a non-invasive procedure where you don't go to sleep. There's no anesthesia. You go and you sit in a chair and they put a helmet on your head with magnets all in it, and you sit and watch TV for 15 minutes or 20 minutes, depending on the place you go to. Some places might not have a TV, but they do the magnetic stimulation of the brain. And there's iron in your blood, there's hemoglobin, and the magnets help with movement of the blood circulation in your brain to like wake up different lobes of your brain that aren't getting accurate blood flow or sufficient blood flow in order to regulate the mood effectively. And so you can do that like 3 times a week for like 8 weeks or something, depending on treatment protocol recommended. But you may get treatment resistant people, you may get people that are medication resistant, but you also may get people that they're just angry and depressed because they won't let go what their mom, their dad, their grandpa, their sister, their brother, their teacher, somebody did in their life. And so, you know what, your feelings are valid, but you don't have to feel them forever. What are we going to, you're allowed to be angry, but what are we going to do with it that's beneficial for you rather than not beneficial for you? Right. Bullies and victims. So bullying, aggressive physical, verbal behavior towards specific victim over a period of time involving intimidation, coercion, and exclusion. Bullies can be aggressive children. They may also be victims. Pure bullies are socially competent, manipulate others, and they're usually liked by some peers and disliked by others. The victims are targets of aggression. They may also victimize others. So a victim of a bully may victimize others. So the bully may create a bully out of the person that's being bullied because they learn the behaviors, they take that aggression out on others. Pure victims are targeted by aggressors and don't victimize others. Often they're socially awkward, physically weaker, and they internalize their issues. Teachers should not accept victimization. They want to have increased awareness and promote good social dynamics in the classroom. Applications. So self-esteem is seen as an important therapeutic target. Key considerations for parents and clinicians include that problems of low self-esteem are not cured by indiscriminate praise. Oh my gosh, yay you, I'm so proud of you, right? Like that is not gonna fix it. It may help, it may be positive. Oh, just look at the bright side, look at all the good in your life, right? All that toxic positivity stuff, that doesn't fix anything. Sometimes it can dig the hole deeper. Distinctions in categories of praise. So person, ability, and social comparison, dimension of intensity, and they have an effect on the child. So you want to pay attention to the categories of praise that are given. Do you only ever praise one part of a child? Or do all parts of the child receive praise? Right? Like I'm only a good student, but I'm not a good sister, or I'm only a good volleyball player, I'm not a very good band member, or whatever. And the ability that there's the ability of praise to encourage cheating. Praise should be genuine. Oh my gosh, you're the smartest kid I've ever met. Oh my God, right? And so it might start like if that child has been failing quizzes and things, you're saying, oh my gosh, you're so smart. I'm just so proud of all the hard work you do. You're just the smartest. They might feel compelled to fulfill that label that you're giving them. And so they're motivated to cheat, right? Oh my gosh, I have to be the straight A student that they're saying that I am, and they want to make it happen. And so they might cheat in order to get there, right? So it's saying ability praise may encourage cheating. Oh my gosh, I get praise for doing a good job on my quizzes and tests. I want more of that. I'm going to cheat, right? So that's another way that can be looked at. It's important to reduce hostile attribution bias. Consider the locus, stability, and controllability of attribution. So locus of control, what is that? I didn't put a slide in about that. I don't know why I didn't, but I'll say it now. What is locus of control? So there's internal and external. And internal locus of control plainly is the belief that you can control your world and you can influence the outcome of your life. You have the ability to do that. Versus external locus of control is you believe you have no ability to control anything in your life and you're at the whim of the gods and the winds, and your life is controlled by external forces. There's nothing you can do to improve upon it or change it. Oh, this is just my life. It's always going to be like this. I'm always going to be depressed. I'm never going to find a good guy. I'm never going to get married. I'm never going to have a good job. I'm just stuck at this one forever. Right? External locus of control. I don't think I can do anything about it. Internal locus of control. You know what? I'm going to change my job. I don't like where I'm at. I want to go on a date. I want a boyfriend. I'm going to get on a dating app. I'm going to go to speed dating. That's even still a thing. It sounds like fun, right? Like, I'm going to do stuff to control and affect my world, right? And also want to think about building a healthy self with clients. And you can apply the 11 principles of character education, which I had never heard of that until this PowerPoint. So I found a graphic for it, of course. So this is from the Character Education Partnership. Very easily Googleable image. I found it was the first one that popped up. So the 11 principles of character education involve, number 1, promoting core values. 2, define character to include thinking, feeling, and doing. 3, use a comprehensive approach. 4, create a caring community. 5, provide students with opportunities for moral action. 6, offer a meaningful and challenging academic curriculum. 7, foster student self-motivation. 8, engage staff as a learning community. 9, foster shared leadership. 10, engage family and community members as partners. And 11, assess the culture and climate of the school. These have to do with education, but these absolutely could be things that you could do in a counseling relationship. Help a client figure out what their values are, especially if you're an addictions counselor. That's something they often don't remember. Or maybe they never even had any. I don't even know what's important to me. I've been drunk and high for so long. I don't know what I care about. Who am I? I don't know. Right. So, finding core values and figuring those things out, not always the case, but I've seen it a lot in my work with people without alcohol and drug use issues. They just don't know what matters to them anymore because they valued the substances for so long over everything else. Everything else just kind of fizzled away. But yeah, absolutely. These can be things you could target in the counseling relationship. 6 pillars of character. Okay, these are some cool things that I found that I just thought they were cool to look at. So 6 pillars of character development that are important here: trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. And there's colors associated with each, but the description. So trustworthiness involves being honest, don't deceive, cheat, or steal, be reliable, do what you say you'll do. That's integrity, right? Are you doing what you say when no one's looking? It's integrity. Have the courage to do the right thing, build a good reputation, and be loyal, standing by your family, friends, and country. Respect involves treating others with respect, following the golden rule, which is treating others like you'd like to be treated. Be tolerant of differences, use good manners, not bad language, be considerate of the feelings of others, don't threaten, hit, or hurt anyone, and deal peacefully with anger, insults, and disagreements, right? And so even looking at these first 2, these are absolutely great things to work on with someone that's in addiction recovery, right? We got to work on your trustworthiness. You've been lying to everyone around you. No one trusts you to be sober right now. Maybe they got a CPS caseworker that's trying to take their kids. They got trustworthiness to prove, right? Respect. Maybe they disrespected a lot of people in their addiction. Maybe somebody with a personality disorder has a respect issue. You want to look at that. For responsibility, do what you're supposed to do. Persevere and keep trying. Always do your best. Use self-control. Be self-disciplined. Think before you act. Consider the consequences and be accountable for your choices. Fairness. Play by the rules. Take turns and share. Be open-minded. Listen to others. Don't blame others carelessly. Being caring involves being kind, compassionate, showing you care, expressing gratitude, forgiving others, and helping people in need. And citizenship is doing your share to make your school and community better, cooperating, getting involved in community affairs, staying informed, voting if you're of voting age, being a good neighbor, obeying laws and rules, respecting the authorities, and protecting the environment. So these are all characteristics that you could work on with clients and being a healthy individual, right? We want to build these characteristics in clients if they're interested, of course, in working on that. But we can educate them on these are healthy characteristics to strive for. Would you like to work on these? And they can say yes, or they can say no, and you can work on that together. Something important for you guys to know about is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I was educated on this recently. I don't know why I never heard of it sooner, but I think it's an important document. It was adopted on December 10th, 1948, and the United Nations got together to identify 30 articles that outline basic human rights that all humans should have, regardless of race, color, sex, or creed or location. They're basic human rights that every person should have. And so just to show you some examples of them, here's the first three. So Article 1, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. Article 2, everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration without distinction of any kind, such as race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status. Furthermore, no distinction shall be made on the basis of the political, jurisdictional, international status of the country or territory to which a person belongs, whether it be independent, trust, non-self-governing, or under any other limitation of sovereignty. And Article 3, everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. So these are all really great things that you can use for the empowerment of individuals that have experienced sex trafficking, or individuals that have gone through trauma, or experienced racism, sexism, ageism, political distress, or maybe they've experienced, oh goodness, what's that word? Where it is totally escaping my brain right now, but basically the ism for whenever you're an immigrant and people are against the fact that you're from another country, I don't know why it's totally escaping my mind. I'm thinking extraterrestrial, but obviously I'm not talking about ET. It's something close to that. Maybe it'll pop in my head in a minute. But these articles are really great thing. They're called the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. They outline basic human rights for persons in all countries around the world. Very important document. Okay, focus on developmental psychopathology. So serious conduct problems include oppositional defiant disorder, conduct disorder, and antisocial personality disorder. These things can start early. 8% of murders in 2002 were committed by children. So one of the questions I actually ask on my psychosocial development of new clients is whether or not they have a history of abusing animals. It's kind of like my psychopathy question, like, do they lack empathy? Did they ever do that? I've only ever come across one to date. And he came in knowing that he was a sociopath and had a criminal history and was recently out of prison and different things. But prevention can occur if early intervention is emphasized. And so teaching empathy and, these different things can limit the negative outcome for that kind of personality development. Pathways of antisocial behavior, they could be an early starter, life course persistent, or a late starter. Adolescence is limited, or their childhood could be limited. Parents should seek help based on age and persistence of these issues. Influences involve physiological, neuropsychological, and environmental things, and treatments are multifaceted. They target the child, family, and other contexts. That is the end of the slides, and now it is time for questions. Okay, so based on the model of the structure of self-concept by Marsh and Shavelson, the non-academic self is divided into 3 areas: social, emotional, and what? Relational, spiritual, intellectual, or physical? Physical. According to many studies, which domain of self-concept correlates highly with overall self-esteem from late childhood through adulthood? Peer acceptance, athletic competence, physical appearance, or physical competence? Physical appearance. What process are children using when they observe the performance of others and use it as a standard for judging their own abilities? Self-enhancing bias, self-defamation, social comparison, or social aspiration? Social comparison. Children's developing self-concepts differ on the basis of cultural values and emphases. North American children are more likely than children from Eastern cultures to incorporate which of the following elements in their self-concepts: characteristics of parents, self-criticism, independence, or relationships. Independence. Morality is an important domain of self-concept that involves the capacity to distinguish right from wrong and the capacity to choose to do right. The elements of morality include all of the following except sociability, emotions, behaviors, or cognitions. Sociability. In Piaget's stages of moral development, what is the stage in which individuals strictly adhere to rules and believe rule violations are always punished? Pre-moral period of morality, autonomous, conventional, or heteronormous morality, excuse me. Heteronomous, not normous. Heteronomous morality. Tim is doing poorly in math. Although he knows he's not a very good math student, it does not concern him greatly. He spends most of his time after school playing hockey, a sport at which he excels. Tim's fifth grade math teacher tries to motivate him to stay after school for tutoring, but Tim doesn't want to miss hockey practice. Furthermore, he reasons two of his teammates have even lower marks in math than he does. Which of the following statements about Tim's self-concept is most accurate? Tim's self-concept is low because he thinks poorly of himself in math. Tim's self-concept depends on his academic view of self. Tim's self-concept reflects understanding of his strengths and weaknesses. And Tim's self-concept is undifferentiated because of his age. His concept reflects understanding his strengths and weaknesses. A couple left. Which of the following is a temperamental characteristic associated with prosocial behavior? Low social anxiety, popularity among peers, coherent self-concept, or intelligence? Low social anxiety. And last question. The ability to restrain or redirect a strong impulse in order to perform a less preferred response is called emotional reactivity, positive regulation, conscience-oriented behavior, or effortful control. Effortful control. All right, and if you watch my last presentation, you know that I'm going to start doing these at the end. So questions for you to answer in the comments. I'd love for you to answer them, but they are optional. So go look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. What are some that stand out to you as most important and why? There's 30 of them to pick from. And 2, which personality disorder, if any, are you nervous to come into contact with clinically and why? Please feel free to leave your answers in the comments below this video, and I hope it was useful for you to listen to this video. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your morning, afternoon, or night, whenever you're watching this, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.